All right, here we go. Okay. So, hello out there in video land. We are continuing the reading of what some call the Cyclops chapter, in which we have the citizen holding forth in the tavern. And today, this is a continuation. We started last week. And this to me has one of the funniest episodes in it that has to do with the uh, recently deceased uh, Patty Dignam. So, that being said, here we go. And lo, as they quaffed their cup of joy, a godlike messenger came swiftly in, radiant as the eye of heaven, a comely youth, and behind him there passed an elder of noble gait and countenance, bearing the sacred scrolls of law, and with him his lady wife, a dame of peerless lineage, fairest of her race. Little Alf Bergen popped in round the door and hid behind Barney's snug, squeezed up with the laughing, and was sitting up there in the corner that I hadn't seen snoring drunk, blind to the world, only Bob Doran. I don't know what was up, and Alf kept making signs out the door. Big Ob, what was it? Only that bloody old pantaloon Dennis Breen in his bath slippers with two bloody big books tucked under his oxter, and his wife hotfoot after him, unfortunate wretched woman, trotting like a poodle. I thought Alf would split. Sylvia.
Look at him, says he. He's traipsing all over Dublin with a postcard somebody sent him with U.P. up on it to take and he doubled up. Take a what? Says I. Libel action, says he, for £10,000. Oh, hell, says I. The bloody mongrel began to growl that put the fear of God in you, seeing something was up, but the citizen gave him a kick in the ribs. Be ado bushed, he says. Who? Says Joe. Breen, says Al. He was in John Henry Menton's, and then he went round to Collis and Ward's, and then Tom Rockford met him and sent him round to the sub-sheriff for a lark. Oh, God, I have a pain laughing. U.P. up. The long fellow gave him an eye as good as a process. And now the bloody old lunatic has gone round to Green Street to look for a G-man. When is Long John going to hang up that fellow in Mountjoy? Says Joe. Bergen, says Bob Doran, waking up. Is that Belf Bergen? Yes, says Alf. Hanging? Wait till I show you. Here, Terry, give us a pony. That bloody old fool, £10,000. You should have seen the Long John. I, U.P. And he started laughing. Next.
Who are you laughing at? Says Bob Doran. Is that Bergen? Hurry up, Terry boy, says Alf. Terence O'Ryan heard him, and straightway brought him a crystal cup full of the foaming ebon ale, which the noble twin brothers, Bun Arva and Bun Gardelon, brew ever in their divine ale vats, cunning as the sons of deathless Leda. For they garner the succulent berries of the hop, and mass and sift and bruise and brew them, and they mix therewith sour juices, and bring the must to the sacred fire, and cease not night or day from their toil, those cunning brothers, lords of the vat. Then did you, chivalrous Terence, hand forth, as to the manner born, that nectarous beverage, and you offered the crystal cup to him that thirsted, the soul of chivalry in beauty akin to the immortals. But he, the young chief of the O'Bergens, could ill brook to be outdone in generous deeds, but gave thereof with gracious gesture a testoon of costliest bronze. Thereon embossed in excellent smithwork was seen the image of a queen of regal port, scion of the house of Brunswick, Victoria, her name, most excellent majesty, by grace of God, of the United Kingdom and Great Britain and Ireland, and of the British dominions beyond the sea, Queen, Defender of the Faith, Empress of India, even she, who bore rule, victress over many peoples, the well-beloved, for they knew and loved her, from the rising of the sun to the going down thereof, the pale, the dark, the ruddy, and the Ethiop.
Mhm. What do you think, Dave? You think we should begin a little discussion here?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a fair amount of stuff here, to say the least. So we had the UP up issue again, which we've gone over, I think at least 3 times. So someone want to bring in the explanation of that, or a possible explanation of that?
I gave you a possible explanation last week, Duncan, which came up at this class that I was doing in the James Joyce Centre. When Bloom and Stephen arrived at 9 Eccles Street and hopped over the wall, both of them urinated into the bushes, and they were judging the arc of the urination, and it could be UP up.
Mm-hmm.
For what it's worth. I don't think you'll find that in any textbook.
Yeah, I think Gifford has something quite different from that, if I remember correctly. And I'm amazed, even though I've read the Bill have something.
Yeah, UP was also a mark on whiskey bottles. It stood for underproof, and it was U period P period on a whiskey bottle, and it meant underproof, which would mean less than standard proof of whiskey. So not, and so in some way that could be an insult to someone, meaning like they're 2 slices short of a loaf, or
Mhm.
somehow not quite normal in a way because they're underproof. And so that's just something I throw out there. I don't know if we'll ever know what Joyce actually intended.
Yeah, like in so many things.
The
Was it
letter
possibly?
in which Joyce uses the phrase, sorry, I've cut across you, Duncan. I beg your pardon.
No, please, Joe.
But there's a letter where Joyce uses the phrase to one of his friends. Apparently, this is the quote. Apparently, I've completely overworked myself, and if I don't get back sight to read it all, if I don't get back sight to read, it is all UP up. So it's all over. You see,
Right.
So
Oh,
Yeah.
and
okay.
You're used up.
well,
It's all up.
I
Like
think
OUT.
bills. The explanation I usually use people is bills.
Yeah.
That's and you can also find it in Dickens' Oliver's Twist if you go around. But I think, what did Joyce mean? I'd say it's all over. It's all
Mm-hmm.
That's what the meaning in the anonymous card is. It's all over.
I'm wondering, we've had some good ideas here, and certainly it is couched in ambiguity. And I'm wondering if that is something that simply amplifies the fact that Breen is a couple bricks short of a load, because nobody knows totally what it means, and he's getting all worked up about something that we're not really sure about.
Right.
But he does think it's libelous, which so he does understand it to be an insult.
Right.
Or he takes it to be.
But and just to come back to that, Bill, right? Point taken. And I'm wondering, though, everyone else thinks it's a matter of humor and ridicule, including, it would seem by implication, people associated with the law So does that also show us how unreasonable this guy is? And then just to take it a step further, sorry, I'm on a bit of a rampage here. Shows the miserable situation of the former Josie Powell, who's now Josie Breen and was a former flame of Bloom's, and her really tough situation because she's now married to this guy who doesn't take his shoes off when he goes to bed, apparently, among other failings,
Yeah,
and that makes Bloom start to look pretty good.
Yeah, and she's kind of UP up also. If you remember when Bloom meets her in the street and they're having the discussion, he's looking at her clothes and he's looking at the crumbs and the tatteredness, and contrasting it to what a desirable woman she was back in the day when they were together. And I want to go a little bit further. Why stop now? Which it's also, I think, a comment on the guys in the tavern with Michael, with the citizen. That part of this rhetoric, stylized language there. So let me see if I can find an example. Da 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 da. Terrence Orion heard him and straightway brought him a crystal cup full of foaming ebon ale, which the noble twin brothers, Bunaveg and Bunalad, brew ever in their, blah, 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 blah. And this is this grandiose, over the top hero story, which in contrast to basically these, let's say what they are. They're heavy drinkers hanging out in the tavern, kowtowing to the citizen, which is kind of a little shabby all in itself.
I don't see that as all. I don't see them kowtowing to the citizen in any way. I mean, the citizen
gathering around him. How about that?
No. They're not gathering around him at all. He's just there. He's like a fixture, and he's hoping that somebody will stand him a drink. I mean, he's just a lounge lizard. He just hangs out in the pub, and eventually somebody will hand him, buy him a drink, and they'll ask him a question, and he'll go on and on about Ireland and blah, 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 and nationalism and stuff. And they, I don't think they take him seriously either. They just, he's kind of like Breen in a way. He's an eccentric character who they put up with because they enjoy, they sort of take the piss of him more often than not. That's my read of it. I don't think they give him any particular honor or respect.
Okay.
But
well, like I said, it could all, at least in my mind, it can be a gathering around him. He is a focal point, for better or worse.
Well, actually, he's off in the corner with his dog. I mean, he's not. But anyway, I'll.
Oh, is that true? Are they not at a table right there with all these characters around the table? Joe is shaking his head a little bit.
Oh, no, I think they're up in the corner, and they did they do turn, and the narrator turns on the citizen at the end. He says, "Oh, he's some bloody fool that's acting," and this kind of stuff. So it's pretty nasty little group. They have a sour word. They all have a sour word for everyone.
Right.
Joe, would you know, or would anyone know, when did Barney Kiernan's close down?
Oh, I think in 1947, I think. There's a photograph of it in 1946.
Okay.
The most recent I've seen, but as a pub, I think it stopped in 46 or 47.
Okay.
Someone told me it operated as a shop then for a few years. But it's still there. And if you look on Google Maps and find it, you'll find a for sale sign on it.
No, I saw it last summer. I walked down that street, but there wasn't any for sale sign on it then.
It's come down then, yeah. Google.
Yeah.
Was it painted yellow still?
No, it was blue.
I beg your pardon, but blue is right. That's what it is. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very distinct.
Blue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great, fantastic details. I appreciate it.
Mm.
I appreciate it.
But
Any other comments or any questions about what we've read so far today?
I would just like to point out the description of, since we've been talking about Dennis and Josie Breen, right? Okay, where is it now? There passed an elder of noble gait and countenance, bearing the sacred scrolls of the law, and with him his lady wife, a dame of peerless lineage, fairest of her race. I mean, this is brilliant. This is such a nice chapter to read aloud because of the rhetorical extravagance which are permeated throughout.
Yeah.
And the delight, and I see the smile on Joe's face. The delight is the difference between this high flowing language and what it's describing.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm in another discussion group tonight on Dubliners, and it is a very good collection of stories, but it's got none of the playfulness that we see in Ulysses. I mean, this is really Joyce coming of age, I think, as a writer.
Allowing full vent to his humor.
Yes.
Okay. Are we ready to proceed?
Yep.
And I guess
It's me.
There's one, just to go back to the citizen again, a couple of pages before that, Joe is the guy that wants to see the citizen to talk about the hoof and mouth disease because he was up at the castle. And so he turned into Barney Kiernan's, and there, sure enough, was a citizen up in the corner having a great confab with himself and that bloody mangy Mongol, Gary Owen, and he waiting for what the sky would drop in the way of a drink. So the citizen is just there probably all day long. And Bob Doran's been drinking his way through Dublin, and he's in a snug around the corner. I mean, you can't hardly see him. So
collapsed in another corner.
In another corner, yeah. And I think the rest of them are all up, just bellied up to the bar. But
okay, so okay. So let me kind of draw the interior of the pub. And the citizen is just off at a table, him and his dog. And is he talking across other tables and talking to people at the bar and, haranguing them?
No, he's sitting at
his own business. He talks to the dog, and then every now and then somebody will address something to him and he'll respond. But when he says to the duck, I think he says to the dog, be in your quiet. Be go hushed.
Be the hushed.
Yeah, so it's like, he's telling the dog to shut up, basically. But he doesn't interact with them much until later on when Bloom comes in and they all start talking about. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, when that's put on as a performance, around Bloom's Day, there's a group that put that on, and they're in a pub near Barney Kiernan's, which is very like it. And as you come in the door on your left at the bar is the citizen. Right up the other end of the bar, asleep, is Bob Doran. And the others are just standing, drinking. They're not sitting at tables.
Right.
If you see a table, that's the audience, and you hope the guy beside you is not part of the show.
Okay.
So it's interesting to see it, and that's why I was nodding, because of course I can no longer visualize it other than how I've seen it in performance.
and Joe, what pub is it in?
I can't remember the name of the pub, but it's quite near it,
is it in Little Britain Street, Joe?
I can't remember the name of the street. I have to get out the maps.
Capel Street. Would it be Capel Street?
Oh God, no, it's not in Capel Street. It's near Chicken Lane, if you know where that is. And I sorry, my head is not great for names and places just now. So
Okay.
but I know Val O'Donnell who made that, wrote that little playlet. He would have been in Barney Kiernan's to check it out and all that sort of stuff. You know, he's that sort of guy. And that's it. So you're really picturing fellas standing around holding their drink.
Well, this is totally rearranging my image.
Right in your head, yeah. You'll have to come to Dublin, bring you out on Bloomsday to see it done.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the times that I've read this scene before,
Yeah.
I don't ask me why, but I had a big, a round table with the citizens sitting on one side and other people sitting around, and then people actually maybe forming another kind of ring, a second ring around the tables. But now this has got the citizen here, Bob Doran there,
the citizens
guys at the bar.
If you walk in, the citizen's there ready to bark at you. You know, never mind the dog. That's why he says password. You know, what's the password? You know, he's right there. He's the first thing you see as you come in the door.
Yeah.
And in that performance, they have an invisible dog.
Okay. Fantastic.
Okay.
Anyways.
All right, Anne, take it away.
Okay. What's that bloody Freemason doing, says the citizen, prowling up and down outside. What's that, says Joe. Here you are, says Al, chucking out the rain out. Talking about hanging, I'll show you something you never saw. Hangman's letters. Look at here. So he took a bundle of wisps of letters and envelopes out of his pocket. You okay? Are you cutting, says I. Honest Injun, says Alf. Read them. So Joe took up the letters. Who are you laughing at, says Bob Doran. So I saw there was going to be a bit of a dust. Bob's a queer chap when the poacher's up on him, so says I, just to make talk. How's Willie Murray these times, Alf? I don't know, says Alf. I saw him just now in Capel Street with Paddy Dignam, only I was running after that. You what, says Joe, throwing down the letters. With who? With Dignam, says Alf. Is it Paddy, says Joe. Yes, says Alf. Why? Don't you know he's dead, says Joe. Paddy Dignam dead, says Alf. Aye, says Joe. Sure, I'm after seeing him not 5 minutes ago, says Alf, as plain as a pikestaff. Who's dead, says Bob Doran. You saw his ghost then, says Joe. God between us and all harm. What, says Alf. Good Christ, only 5. What? And Willie Murray with him. The two of them there near what you call him. What? Dignam said, dead. What about Dignam, says Bob Doran. Who's talking about? Dead, says Alf. He's no more dead than you are. Maybe so, says Joe. They took the liberty of burying him this morning anyhow. Paddy, says Alf. Aye, says Joe. He paid the debt of nature. God be merciful to him. Good Christ, says Alf. Be God, he was what you might call flabbergasted. Next, please, I know.
That was very well read.
Excellent.
Oh.
And this
You
is
could
exactly what I
visualize
was,
the whole thing.
That was so well done, Anne. Congrats. That was great.
What happened to your Cork accent, Anne? You lost it there.
You could see the whole thing, can't you?
oh
An
my
Irish
God.
pub and all
Yes, this is what I was talking about in the introduction.
It's the
This is one of
funniest
the
ever.
funniest bits in the whole book right here.
Yeah.
And
I
I
love
laugh
that line. They took the
every
liberty
time.
of burying him. Pardon?
I laugh every time we read this. It's just
I do too. My favorite. We know he's dead. So who's next? Oh, Bill.
In the darkness, spirit hands were felt to flutter, and when prayer by tantras had been directed to the proper quarter, a faint but increasing luminosity of ruby light became gradually visible, the apparition of the etheric double being particularly lifelike, owing to the discharge of mischievous rays from the crown of the head and face. Communication was effected through the pituitary body and also by means of the orange, fiery, and scarlet rays emanating from the sacral region and solar plexus. Questioned by his earth name as to his whereabouts in the heaven world, he stated that he was now on the path of pralaya, of return, but was still submitted to trial of the hands of certain bloodthirsty enemies on the lower astral levels. In reply to a question as to his first sensations in the Great Divide beyond, he stated that previously he had seen as in a glass darkly, but that those who had passed over had somewhat possibilities of atmic development opened up to them. Interrogated as to whether life there resembled our experience in the flesh, he stated that he had heard from more favored beings, now in the spirit, that their abodes were equipped with every modern home comfort, such as talafana, alavatar, hata calda, water closet, and that highest adepts were steeped in waves of volupcy and the fiery purest nature. Having requested a quart of buttermilk, this was brought, and evidently afforded relief. Asked if he had any message for the living, he exhorted all who were still at the wrong side of Maya to acknowledge the true path, for it was reported in demonic circles that Mars and Jupiter were out for mischief in the eastern angle where the ram has power. It was then queried whether there were any special desires on the part of the defunct, and the reply was, "We greet you, friends of Earth, who are still in the body. Mind, CK doesn't pile it on." It was ascertained that the reference was to Mr. Cornelius Kelleher, manager of Messrs. H.J. O'Neill's popular funeral establishment, a personal friend of the defunct, who had been responsible for the carrying out of the internment arrangements. Before departing, he requested that it should be told to his dear son Patsy that the other boot which he had been looking for was at present under the commode in the return room, and that the pair should be sent to Cutlands to be sold, only as the heels were still good. He stated that this had greatly perturbed his peace of mind in the higher region, and earnestly requested that his desire should be made known. Assurances were given that the matter would be attended to, and it was intimated that this had given satisfaction. Next.
He is gone from mortal haunts, Dignam, son of our morning. Fleet was his foot on the bracken, Patrick with the beamy brow, wail Manba with your wind, and wail ocean with your whirlwind. There he is again, says the citizen staring out. Who, says I. Bloom, says he. He's on point duty up and down there for the last 10 minutes. And begob I saw his physog do a peep in and then slither off again. Little Alf was knocked byways. Faith he was. Good Christ, says he, I could have sworn it was him. And says Bob Dornan with the hat at the back of his head, back of his pole, lowest blackguard in Dublin when he's under the influence. Who said Christ is good? I beg your parsnip, said Alf. Is that a good Christ, said Bob Dornan, to take away poor little Willie Dignam? Ah, well, says Alf, trying to pass it off. He's over all his troubles. But Bob Doran shouts out of him, he's a bloody ruffian, I say, to take away poor little Willie Dignam. Terry came down and tipped him the wink to keep quiet, that they didn't want that kind of talk in a respectable licensed premises. And Bob Doran started to do the weeps about Paddy Dignam, true as you're there. The finest man, he says, sniveling, the finest, purest character. Next, please.
The tear is bloody near your eye, talking through his bloody hat. Fitter for him to go home to the little sleepwalking bitch he married. Mooney, the bum bailiff's daughter. Mother kept a kip in Hardwick Street that used to be stravaging about the landings. Phantom Lines told me that was stopping there at 2 in the morning without a stitch on her, exposing her person, open to all comers, fair field and no favour. The noblest, the truest, says he. And he's gone, poor little Willie, poor little Paddy Dignan. And mournful, and with a heavy heart, he bewept the extinction at that beam of heaven. Old Gary Owen started growling again at Bloom that was skeezing around the door. Come in, come on, says the citizen, he won't eat you. So Bloom slopes in with his pod's eye on the dog, and he asks Terry, was Martin Cunningham there? Oh, Christ McKeown, says Joe, reading one of the letters. Listen to this, will you? And he starts reading out one. 7 Hunter Street, Liverpool, to the High Sheriff of Dublin, Dublin. Honoured Sir, I beg to offer my services in the above-mentioned painful case. I hanged Joe Gann in Bootle Jail on 12th of February 1900, and I hanged, show us, Joe, says I, Private Arthur Chase for foul murder of Jesse Tilsett in Pentonville Prison, and I was assistant when, Jesus, says I, Billingham executed the awful murder code Smith. The citizen made a grab at the letter. Hold hard, said Joe. I have a special knack of putting the noose. Once in, can't get out, hoping to be favoured. I remain, honoured sir, my terms is 5 guineas. H. Rumbold, Master Barber. And a barbarous bloody barbarian he is too, says the citizen. And the dirty scrawl of the wretch, says Joe. Here, says he, take them to hell out of my sight, Alf. Hello, Bloom, says he, what will you have? So they started arguing about the point. Bloom saying he wouldn't, and he couldn't, and they excuse him no offence at all to that. And then he said, well, he'd just take a cigar. He's a prudent member and no mistake. He was one of your prime stinkers, Terry, says Joe. And Alf was telling us there was one chap sent in a mourning card with a black border all around it. They're all barbers, says he, from the black country that would hang their own fathers for 5 quid down and travelling expense. Over to you, Carlin.
I wonder if it's worth stopping here.
Yeah, I think we need to stop and go over this. There's, I think, at least 3 different things going on.
Well, can I ask a threshold question? Is the dead man Paddy Dignam or Willie Dignam?
It's
Patty Dignam.
Patty.
Well,
Paddy.
well, we have, but Bob Doran shouts out at him, he's a bloody ruffian, I say, to take away poor little Willie Dignam.
Yeah, but his name is Paddy Dignam, but Bob Doran is drunk and he's confused. He's calling him.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That's the explanation.
And someone just saw him with somebody called Willie Murray, so he's probably getting confused.
I probably mixed Willie with the Dignam. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, but his name is not Patrick William Dignam. Is that?
That's what I thought it was going
that
to
we
be.
know of, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Bill,
also
sorry, Lois, go ahead, please.
The same question I frequently ask whenever we're reading this. In this chapter, we have somebody who's defined as I. Who says I? And I always ask the question, who's this I? Show us, Joe, says I. Who's the I?
He is the narrator, but we don't know his identity. He's right at the very beginning. He starts up telling us his story.
Yes, from the very beginning. I was just passing.
Right. But
so we don't know who he is. He's just an I.
He's just he's the narrator.
Yeah.
But apparently, yes, but he apparently knows everybody. He knows Bloom. He knows the citizen. He knows Alf. He knows Bob. He knows Terry.
He's also a nasty person.
Yeah, he knows Joe. So I suppose there's various conjectures about who he might be, but I don't think it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, it confuses me every time, and I bring it up every time, and I get this answer, and I forget.
Well, this is where I think an overarching theme in Joyce is that he wants to bring in the actual ambiguity and confusion that is the world we live in. And he doesn't want to lay out a novel where everything can be identified and it all flows in a organized manner. But he's kind of twisting our tail at all points. And I think that for me, that's a deliberate choice that Joyce made. He wants to instruct us that it's okay to view the world as a very confusing, frequently absurd place. Personal opinion here.
But he's also demonstrating another style or form of writing in first person narration,
right,
as opposed to third person omniscient narration or any other time. So he's playing with the form, with just another form in this particular episode.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like bringing that whole thing in the midst of all this absurdity, then we go into tantras and jivic auras and pituitary glands and all this stuff.
I was the first line that was read was line 300. What's that bloody Freemason doing? Said the citizen, prowling up and down outside.
That's Bloom.
I know who it is.
Yeah.
Here's my question, and actually you spoke to it, so I'll address it to the honorable member from Cleveland, Ohio. My sense is that there's been a cottage industry devoted to discussing Bloom as a Freemason. Bill, could you say something about that? Because I really don't know much about it. But this is not the first such reference.
No, I know Corny Kelleher talks about it. He makes weird hand things and says he's into craft, and people assume that's how he gets on in the world, that he gets a leg up from his Masonic brothers,
right?
Who but again, it's one of those things. Everything begins in medias res. It's in the middle of it all. We're just thrown into it, and there's no. It's not like a typical, as Duncan was saying, a typical novel where the characters would be introduced and Bloom, a Freemason, or sometime Freemason, where the narrator tells you things. We don't get that. We just get these very oblique references to him possibly being a Mason. And the citizen obviously thinks he's a Freemason.
Okay, and so then here's my supplementary question. Knowing very little myself about Freemasonry, would it not though be unusual for a Catholic, which Bloom actually is, to be a Freemason?
Well, in Bloom's case, I think he'd be hard pressed to say he's a Catholic, even though he has been he's been baptized, but he's certainly not a practicing Catholic.
Right, and I think his mother was a Protestant, wasn't she? Higgins?
His mother was a Protestant.
His mother was a Protestant, and he only became a Catholic in order to marry Molly.
Correct. Okay.
The Freemasonry was stamped out in most of Europe. I think it only persisted in Russia in the period of when Tolstoy was writing. There were pockets of Freemasonry all over Russia. It was a very popular thing among the nobility there. But it had largely died out in the rest of Europe, and then came back into fashion. But mostly, as you say, in Protestant countries, and very often it's associated, at least in London, in England, it's associated with the police force. The police are often Freemasons and brothers in some way. So there might be some oblique reference to that here, because we think of, or Bloom thinks that, I think he thinks Corny Kelleher is in the pay of the castle and is an informant. And so there might be some connection there too between Freemasonry and the police department, but I don't know.
Well, they're both viewed as in conspiratorial type ways. I mean,
Yeah.
Masons are a secret organization. I don't know if you've ever seen the book, and you open it up. I used to work for Half Price Books many decades ago, and so we get these books from the Masons, and you open it up, and it would say, if you're not a Mason, you better not read this, or all kinds of bad things are going to happen to you.
Right.
So there's a lot of spookiness related to the Masons.
Duncan, the minute you read that, wouldn't you want to read it straight away?
A person of my sort, absolutely.
Are there Masonic symbols on your American dollar bill?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. If you ever want a really fun book to read, read Mumbo Jumbo by Ishmael Reed, where he's giving a whole history of the United States in the 20s and 30s as a contest between voodoo and the Masons. It's a totally outrageous book, but it does have some factual stuff in there.
Well, a lot of the founding fathers were Masons.
Yeah.
Okay.
One bit of information that I might share with you. My wife, when she was a girl, her father and grandfather were Masons, and she joined the Rainbow Girls. That was the group of, like, the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Guides and stuff. There were young Masons called the Rainbow Girls, and we have the Rainbow Girls obviously in Finnegan's Wake, but they are the companions of Izzy, and they all are identified by various colors. But I always wondered if Joyce knew of the Rainbow Girls and the Masonic tradition. I think he may have.
I forget what the woman's section of that was called, but my mother was a member of the woman's branch of the Masons.
The Star of the East or something like that?
Eastern Star.
Eastern
Star. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but there were certainly no Catholics as members, at least not in my day.
Right.
Not in my lifetime, not in the 20th century. I mean, but so the Catholics had their own thing. They had the
Knights of Columbus.
Knights of Columbus, yeah.
Right, which I have a son-in-law who's a member of the Knights of Columbus. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Was the reason for them not being members of the Masons to do with what Rome was dictating, or was it because they weren't allowed in?
No, it was the Catholics. The Pope forbade Catholics from becoming Masons. It wasn't that the Masons would not accept Catholics.
Really?
It was the other way around.
Huh. And what about Jews? Could Jews join the Masons? Were they in the Masons?
I guess that was a yes from Bill. Okay. Fantastic. Really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying Jews certainly could become Masons. That was part of the whole, especially if you read the sections in War and Peace that Tolstoy talks about. Pierre becomes a Mason. What a great character in literature. And it was part of that whole movement towards universal brotherhood. I mean, the Masons accepted everybody. Anybody could be a Mason. You didn't have to be a particular ethnicity. You didn't have to be a particular religion. You didn't have to be. So they certainly would have accepted Catholics. It's just that the Pope thought of it as an idolatrous and I don't know. I can't remember exactly what how the church worded their opposition to it, but it had to do with you can't serve two masters, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm getting a lot of furniture in my mind moved around today.
So thinking that Bloom was a Mason was not out of the realm of possibilities. He certainly could have been.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an insult
To be a Mason?
from the citizen. Was
No, I think he's just, well, he doesn't like Bloom. And he's probably, and it's like, if you're not a member of a group, you tend to be a little disdainful of that members of that group, so kind of a sour grapes thing. But a lot of people think have that, whoa, they're Masons, they do weird stuff. So you make fun of them, you call them a Mason. But but it is interesting that the citizen doesn't say, "Oh, there goes that Jew." He's not anti-Semitic until, I mean, later in the episode, we might get that feeling that he's a bit anti-Semitic, but he's not really. He doesn't call Bloom a Jew. He calls him a Mason, a Freemason.
The feeling about Masons was that they gave contracts out to each other.
Right.
And so that if someone was in the Department of Agriculture and there was X vehicles being bought, and if your competitor got the contract, you'd be trying to say, oh, he's a Mason, you see.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, when asked, is he a Mason, he will say no, because he's not. But they would say that, wouldn't they? Because they're a secret outfit.
That's right.
That's how it works, right?
It's beyond explaining. You say he has to be in the bloody Masons. They're all in that together,
Right.
I don't know to what extent the truth. It was supposed to be rife in the architectural profession. When I was a teenager, going out into the world and into business, people were cautioning me about Masons. I never met one in my life that I knew.
Are you on the square?
It's a secret organization, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose all you guys are Masons and you just won't say it to me. I know.
Funny handshake.
Yeah.
Well, there's a Mason's Hall not far from where I live. And recently they've introduced the concept of culture night.
Oh, yeah.
And the Mason's Hall was open on culture night.
Yes.
And I went in, had a look around and lived to tell the tale.
Yeah.
It's a few interesting symbols and things like that. And there was one guy there that I knew who I think was probably a Mason.
Yeah.
He said hello to me and I said hello to him, and that was it.
Yeah.
That was secret handshake.
No, not this time. But I mightn't have been worthy now of the secret handshake.
Yeah. Which
Bloody
Mason's Hall was that, Jim? Where was that hall?
It's directly opposite King John's Castle, Joe.
Oh, right. So the Masonic Hall in Dublin is one of the best buildings in Dublin. It's on the tourist guides. And who is it? Someone here, Orla, wasn't it? It was Orla here tonight. Last time we talked about the Masons, she works quite near the Masonic Hall I'm talking about, but it's open to the public. You can have coffee in there. And she used to go in there for her, what was it? Was it for her keep fit or something?
No, she's a rainbow girl. You've exposed her as a rainbow girl.
No, I think she was just a person who was on some sort of diet and exercise. Because they rent it out.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful building. It's in Marlborough Street, just opposite Dáil Éireann, the Parliament.
Just opposite Dáil Éireann, yeah. and it makes great theatre because they have I'm going to say the S word. I'm sorry. They have banks of seats, and you can perform Shakespeare there very well. You know, because it feels Elizabethan in there, and so you know, like it's like, where are you or were you ever a member of the Communist Party? You know, like you can't answer that question successfully.
Well, one would hope that any building associated with the Masons would be a nice building.
Yes.
Since, of course, the original members literally were Masons.
Yeah.
Dan Brown used the one in
Guild, I
Washington as the centerpiece for his novel, I think, didn't he? The Lost Symbol, it was called. Dan Brown's latest work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's on all the
There's
dollar
all
bills,
these
isn't it?
symbols around Washington. You might know about it.
Yeah. So,
We had, just to go back to the text, we had in the long description the word Bung Ivy and Bung Ardelon. Those are the Guinness brothers. Edward Guinness was Lord Ivy or the Earl of Ivy, and Arthur Guinness was Lord Ardelon. So, and then in the letter from the barber, which is hilarious because Joyce puts in all of his misspellings, foul murder, FOWL, and he spells guineas like Guinnesses, really, but anyway.
Yeah. On page 248, he has the word water closet, which is obviously water closet.
Right. Yeah. Well, all of those are sort of pseudo Sanskrit.
Yeah.
For telephone, telephona, water closet, elevator.
Oh, elevator.
Yeah, and hot and cold water.
Hot and cold, yeah.
And yeah, the hot and cold. So the
hot and cold, yeah.
Indoor plumbing, that would be. And I think all of this is sort of directed at Yeats and Moore,
The Golden Dawn,
the Golden Dawn, and George Moore.
Parody.
And Besant and Madame Blavatsky. Well, I like the way that it devolves as time goes on, and it ends up, you know, we greet you, friends of the earth who are still in the body and mind. CK doesn't pile it on, and then it goes into the thing that Patty Dignam is asking to please tell his son Patsy that the other boot which he has been looking for. You know, referring to when they were bringing Patty Digman's body down the stairs. I think he lost a boot somewhere there.
Yeah. The boot is of some significance in that world. I can't remember it. It was explained to me once, but the idea that a person in the next life would be concerned that shoes would be repaired, but just the soles, the heels are fine, or the other way around.
Yes, well, boots do have soles.
Yeah, boots do have soles. Yeah. So it's H. Rumpole, the master barber, the guy who's offering to cut hanging. Well, that's Sir Horace Rumbold, British ambassador to Switzerland. You see, he's using his name. Who was Joyce got into a great row with the British political establishment in Switzerland during the First World War, and he in his correspondence somewhere he refers, if you'll excuse my memory on my my vernacular, he called him Horace Rumpold. Because I think he's the guy who invited him to make a contribution to the war effort. I may be wrong on that, but he got in a row with everyone in the British establishment except Frank Budgeon, who worked there. His best friend.
Joe Gann and for my notes, I've got Joe Gann and Toad Smith. Right? They were also.
That's right. Yeah, they were in consular officials, And this great row of his, which curiously was over a pair of trousers, was with a man called Carr, who was an amateur actor. And Joyce put on, he started a theatre group during the war to promote British culture. And they put on a George Bernard Shaw play, and a dispute arose with Mr. Carr, who was an amateur actor but held the performance together. And he put in a claim for expenses because he'd bought special trousers to wear on the stage. And he wanted also to get the professional rate of pay instead of the agreed rate for an amateur. And Joyce and him had a big row. And these guys, Gann and Toad Smith, were, part of the kind of out to get Joyce type of thing. Joyce took a case against Carr, and Carr took a case against Joyce, which were never settled. But and of course Carr is one of the two British soldiers down later on. Don't know the book for everyone, but when we wander around the prostitute zone, they're one of the two soldiers that get into the row. So he's settling scores here at the new time.
Joel, if you back up just a bit from Rumbold's letter, it's line 413, 412 in my book. It says, "Oh Christ, McEwen." Does Sloat have anything to say about who McEwen is?
Who McEwen is?
I think it's just a common expression, like I don't know,
like Jesus Murphy.
Yeah, Jesus Murphy.
Well, that's interesting. Sloat does have something. It's not much. It says it's an anglicization of the Irish Christ Macon.
But what is that?
Macon, will be Christ my sorrow. Oh, Christ Macon. Yeah, you kind of half hear that still.
Yeah.
I was young, Christ Macron. Yeah, becomes Christ McKeown.
Oh, that's what you're talking about. Okay. A little slow on the uptake here.
One thing I don't think maybe we've discussed it before, but so we have this narrator, this I.
Yeah.
But then we have this other writer or person who is doing this commentary in the background in highfalutin language or is just playing around now. So this whole section on Paddy Dignam in the underworld, Paddy Dignam in the afterlife, and all these musings and conversations with Paddy and questions and answers and stuff. That's not the narrator.
No, it's the explanation I go with. There's all sorts of, you can go anywhere with that, but is that Joyce is beginning to use multiple narrators, and that there are at least two. One, the unknown one, and the other, the narrator. So the narrators seem to have access to the thought processes of the characters as well. So at this stage, which becomes a feature later on.
Okay, so Joel, I just want to get this right. So you're distinguishing between the barfly and the mock heroic voice?
Yeah, they're saying. Well, I'm just saying that seems the most rational explanation. Yeah. See, Joyce experiments with narrators. All these writers in the past, if the narrator says Mr. Pickwick walked down the steps of the house into the sunlight, one thing you can be sure is the sun is shining. But if this narrator says that, I wouldn't be too sure. So the unreliable narrator, and we have a malicious narrator and an unreliable. Well, it's a highly artistic, imaginative narrator to the point of delusion.
Okay. Are we ready to have Carol take us forth or begin another little section of the chapter?
Is there, before a quick question, is there a reason for the hangman's letter here? Or is it just kind of something thrown in?
Well, Alf Bergen got it from the sheriff when he was at the office. He got this bundle of letters. He just thinks they're amusing.
Yeah. It's also appropriate that this would be raised in Barney Kiernan's, because traditionally, the hangmen going up to Mountjoy prison to hang a man, they would get it, their last drink before going on the way to the job. They would drink it in Barney Kiernan's.
Right.
And the
Really?
tradition was in Barney Kiernan's, they never used those glasses again.
Oh,
The barman would take them and they would not wash them. They would, depending on, I think the very last hanging, they just kept the glasses there in a display case. But so see, Barney Kiernan's has a lot to do with hanging.
Oh, weird. Weird.
All right. So, Carol, are you ready to take us forth here?
Okay. And he was telling us there's two fellows waiting below to pull his heels down. And when he gets the drop and choke him properly, and then they chop up the rope after and sell the bits for a few bob a skull. In the dark land they bide, the vengeful knights of the razor. Their deadly coil they grasp, yea, and therein they lead to Erebus whatsoever wight hath done a deed of blood, for I will on no wise suffer it, even so saith the Lord. So they started talking about capital punishment. And of course Bloom comes out with the why and the wherefore and all the cutology of the business. And the old dog smelling him all the time. I'm told those Jewies does have a sort of queer odor coming off them for dogs, about I don't know what all deterrent effect, and so forth and so on. There's one thing it hasn't a deterrent effect on, says Alf. What's that, says Joe. The poor bugger's tool that's being hanged, says Alf. That's so, says Joe. God's truth, says Alf. I heard that from the head warder that was in Kilmainham when they hanged Joe Brady, the Invincible. He told me when they cut him down after the drop, it was standing up in their faces like a poker. Ruling passion strong in death, says Joe, as someone said. That can be explained by science, says Bloom. It's only a natural phenomenon, don't you see? Because on account of the... And then he starts with his jawbreakers about phenomenon and science and this phenomenon and the other phenomenon. The distinguished scientist, Herr Professor Luitpold Blumendoft, tendered medical evidence to the effect that the instantaneous fracture of the cervical vertebrae and consequent scission of the spinal cord would, according to the best approved tradition of medical science, be calculated to inevitably produce in the human subject a violent ganglionic stimulus of the nerve centers of the genital apparatus, thereby causing the elastic pores of the corpora cavernosa to rapidly dilate in such a way as to instantaneously facilitate the flow of blood to that part of the human anatomy known as the penis or male organ, resulting in the phenomenon which has been denominated by the faculty of morbid upwards and outwards philoprogenitive erection in articulo mortis per diminutionem capitis. So of course the citizen was only waiting for the wink of the word, and he starts gassing out of him about the Invincibles and the Old Guard and the men of 67, and who fares to speak of 98, and Joe with him about all the fellows that were hanged, drawn, and transported for the cause by drumhead courts-martial, and a new Ireland, and new this, that, and the other. Talking about New Ireland, he ought to go and get a new dog, so he ought. Mangy, ravenous brute, sniffing and sneezing all around the place and scratching his scabs. And round he goes to Bob Doran, that was standing Alf a half one, sucking up for what he could get. So of course Bob Dornan starts doing the bloody fool with this. Give us the paw. Give the paw, doggy. Good old doggy. Give the paw here. Give us the paw. I don't know, you might want to stop there. It's a very interesting
We will
incident.
go through all of this, but I think considering the time, we're going to go ahead and continue reading to give everybody a chance to do some reading today. And then when we come back next week, let's go through the part that start with the part that Carol just read.
That's a good idea.
How it's going to work.
So next,
The next reader is Dave Little.
I'm okay to pass if you things up. Your call.
If you want to pass, okay, we'll go to Lois.
Lois does not pass.
Lois does not pass. Onward, Lois.
Sarah, bloody end to the paw, he'd paw, and Alf trying to keep him from tumbling off the bloody stool atop the bloody old dog, and he talking all kinds of dribble about trading by kindness and thoroughbred dog and intelligent dog. Give you the bloody pip. Then he starts scraping a few bits of old biscuit out of the bottom of Jacob's tin he told Terry to bring. Gob, he galloped it down like old boots and his tongue hanging out of him a yard long for more. Near ate the tin and all, hungry bloody mongrel. And the citizen and Bloom having an argument about the point. The brothers Shears and Wolf Tone beyond on Arbor Hill. And Robert Emmett had die for your country. And Tommy Moore touch about Sarah Curran and she's far from the land. And Bloom, of course, with his knock-me-down cigar, putting on swank with his lardy face. Phenomenon. The fat heap he married is a nice old phenomenon with a back on her like a ball alley. Time they were stopping up in the City Arms, Pissa Burke told me there was an old one there with a cracked lewd haremon of a nephew. And Bloom trying to get the soft side of her doing the mollycoddle, playing bezique to come in for a bit of the wampum in her will, and not eating meat of a Friday because the old one was always thumping her craw and taking the lout out for a walk. And one time he led him the rounds of Dublin, and by the holy farmer, he never cried crack till he brought him home as drunk as a boiled owl. And he said he did it to teach him the evils of alcohol. And by herrings, if the three women didn't hear near roast him. It's a queer story, the old one. Bloom's wife and Mrs. O'Dowd that kept the hotel. Jesus, I had to laugh at Pissenberg taking them off chewing the fat. And Bloom with his, but don't you see? And, but on the other hand, and sure, more betoken, the Loudon gold was in Powers after. The Blenders rounded Cope Street, going home footless in a cab 5 times in the week after drinking his way through all the samples in the bloody establishment. Phenomenon. The memory of the dead, says the citizen, taking up his pint glass and glaring at Bloom. Bloom, aye, says Joe. You don't grasp my point, says Bloom. What I mean is, Sinn Fein, says the citizen, Sinn Fein Amhan. The friends we love are by our side and the foes we hate before us. Next.
Excellent.
The last farewell was affecting in the extreme. From the belfries far and near, the funeral death bell tolled unceasingly, while all around the gloomy precincts rolled the ominous warning of 100 muffled drums, punctuated by the hollow booming of pieces of ordnance. The deafening claps of thunder and the dazzling flashes of lightning, which lit up the ghastly scene, testified the artillery of heaven had lent its supernatural pomp to the already gruesome spectacle. A torrential rain poured down from the floodgates of the angry heavens upon the bared heads of the assembled multitude, which numbered the lowest computation 500,000 persons. A posse of Dublin Metropolitan Police, superintended by the Chief Commissioner in person, maintained order in the vast throng for whom the York Street Brass and Reed Band whiled away the intervening time by admiringly rendering on their black drape instruments the matchless melody endeared to us from the cradle of Speranza's plaintive music. Special quick excursion trains of holsters charabancs had been provided for the comfort of our country cousins, of whom there were large contingents. Considerable amusement was caused by the favourite Dublin street singers, who sang the night before Larry. The night before Larry was the night before Larry was stretched in their usual Our two inimitable roles did a role with their broadsheets among lovers of the comedy element, and nobody who had a corner in his heart for real Irish fun without vulgarity will begrudge them their hard-earned pennies. The children of the male and female Foundlings Hospital, who thronged the window overlooking the scene, were delighted with this unexpected addition to the day's entertainment, and a word of praise is due to the Little Sisters of the Poor for their excellent idea of affording the poor fatherless and motherless children a genuinely instructive treat. The Viscreal house party, which included many well-known ladies, was chaperoned by their Excellency to the most favoured positions in the grandstand, while the picturesque foreign delegation known as the Friends of the Emerald Isle was accommodated on a tribune directly opposite. The delegation presented in full force consisted of Commodore Batchy Benny Binovan, the semi-paralysed doyen of the party, who had to be assisted to his seat by the aid of a powerful steam crane. Monsieur Pierre-Paul Petitpatent and the Grand Joker Vladimir Pocket Handkerchief and the art joker Leopold Rudewald von Schwanzenbalden Holdenhalfer, Countess Marta Viraja Kazizoni, Pura Bastani, Hiram Y. Bombost, Count Athonus Caramandel Popes, Ali Baba Baksheet, Rahat Locum Effendi, Senor Hildago, Caballero, Don Piccarello Y, Palabras Y, the Paternoster, della Morlora, della Melara, Hapokin Hakari, Pai Hong Chang, Olaf Copper Van Kidesselsen, Mayor Trick Van Trumps, Pen Pox Polax, Paddy Risky, Goose Pond, Pirkus, Kratchen, Britchen Stitch, Herr Hauser, Der Port, Kratz and Hans, Chelsea, Strudel, National, Gymnasium, Montesquieu, Ordinary, Private, Decent, General History, Specialist, Professor, Dr. Kiefer Uber, Gil Bagmine. Oh, I'm going to stop.
Well done,
I
Jim.
was wondering
Well
that.
done.
Great.
Jim, what?
It was brilliant.
Remember, the name of the book is Walches of Stony Batter, just right on the corner of Arbor Hill. Walches Stony Batter. You need a drink after what you've just done.
I'll bear it in mind, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, they might have that on Bloomsday, you know, but on a Sunday, I don't know. You know, you ring them.
Okay.
Brilliant.
I guess there's time. I can pick up my missed turn and just finish the paragraph then, if that works.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'll be fine. Okay.
All the
Robicon.
delegates, without exception,
Perfect.
expressed themselves in the strongest possible heterogeneous terms concerning the nameless barbarity which they had just been called upon to witness. An animated altercation, in which all took part, ensued among the FOTEI as to whether the 8th or 9th of March was the correct date of the birth of Ireland's patron saint. In the course of the argument, cannonballs, scimitars, boomerangs, blunderbusses, stink pots, meat choppers, umbrellas, catapults, knuckle dusters, sandbag, lumps of pig iron were resorted to, and blows were frequently exchanged. The baby policeman, Constable McFadden, summoned by special courier from Booterstown, quickly restored order, and with lightning promptitude proposed the 17th of the month as a solution equally honourable for both contending parties. The ready-witted 9-footer's suggestion at once appealed to all and was unanimously accepted. Constable McFadden was heartily congratulated by all the friends of the Emerald Isle, several of whom were bleeding profusely. Commodore Benigno Benoni, having been extricated from beneath the presidential armchair, it was explained by his legal advisor, Avocado Pagamini, that the various articles secreted in his 32 pockets had been abstracted by him during the affray from the pockets of his junior colleagues in the hopes of bringing them to their senses. The objects, which included several hundred ladies' and gentlemen's gold and silver watches, were promptly restored to their rightful owners, and general harmony reigned supreme.
Oh,
Okay, very good, very good. So next week we're actually going to go and start because we didn't get a chance to discuss any of this. We're going to start with so they started talking about capital punishment.
Where is that?
For line 450.
Oh, there it is. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and in Wordsworth it's page 274.
In Gabler, it's 249.
Okay.
250, I think, Lois and mine. So they started talking about capital punishment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm arguing the point. Got it. Line 450. You got it.
Okay. For those who want to read Shakespeare tomorrow, reading Hamlet Act 5, we will be starting at the usual time and using the same Zoom reading number.
Where are we, please?
Act 5,
In
scene
Hamlet.
2 in Hamlet, if that's what you're asking about.
522. Yes, please.
Yes.
Five.
Scene 2. Yeah.
Scene 2.
Okay.
Perfect. I can get my
Carol,
homework done.
thank you for joining us today, Carol. Hope you'll come back if you.
Thank you. Enjoyed
Yeah.
it very much.
Excellent.
Learned a lot.
Yeah, well, I've got a lot to digest. I've got some,
Yeah.
as I said, some furniture rearranging to do in my. Yeah, interesting. Lots of fun. Lots of fun.
Yes, very.
Well,
Thank you all very much.
Thank
Oh,
you.
goodness. No, hold on. We got 2 more minutes.
Oh,
Let's not waste them.
I thought it was
Yep.
interesting. Whoever made the
Oh, the night before Larry was stretched. Boys, they all paid him a visit. A bait in their bags, who they sketched, and they sweat in their gobs till they riz it. For Larry was ever the lad, if a boy was condemned to the squeezer, would fence all the duds that he had to treat an old friend to the sneezer and moisten his gob before he died.
Okay, so Carol, you had
Very
something
good,
you want
very
to say
good,
there?
Dave, very good.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I thought the postcard, I forget if it was Joe mentioned about the Joyce receiving the postcard or writing the postcard, because I just noticed that that the fellow was carrying the postcard around with him.
Mr. Breen?
Yes, Mr. Breen traipsing all around Dublin with a postcard someone sent him with UP. I hadn't noticed that before.
There we go. Okay, well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And
Thank
I
you.
look